Welcome to the Nevada Patriot Podcast with Matt Sadler.
All right, folks, thank you for tuning in on your FM radio dial, Rumble, YouTube, or at thenevadapatriot.com. I am so glad you're taking time out of your day or night to be with us. 97.7 FM, KPFF, here in Pahrump is where the First Amendment lives. Remember, if you are listening to this on the radio at the 6 p.m. hour, make sure you tune in every night, 6 p.m. There's going to be a talk show, sort of like this. May not be mine, maybe one of the other talented hosts. Different perspectives, different viewpoints. Very important to get a grip on what's going on locally here in Southern Nevada, particularly here in Pahrump. So make sure you tune in each night at 6 p.m. My show will air on Saturdays and Tuesdays. Tuesday will be when the new content comes out 99% of the time. So make sure you do not miss Tuesday night at 6 p.m. to hear my beautiful voice. Remember, all of our content is available to stream 100% free and online at our site, thenevadapatriot.com. You can archive any of our shows dating back to September of 2022 when we started this shindig. I invite you to do that. If there's content topics that are still very apropos right now to view, to listen to, most of our content is in audio format with some graphic images going through, well, not graphic image, that sounded wrong, with visuals scrolling on YouTube and Rumble, or if you're listening on SoundCloud or on the radio, obviously look at the road if you're in your car. Don't look at anything except the road, please. We have enough accidents out here in Pahrump. So most of the time you're going to get my voice. I've only done one visual podcast. Not going to do the next one until I have some success at keto or other diet and exercise plans, and maybe dye some of my beard hair. But that's for another story, another show. Right now, you're stuck with just my voice. So today, it's just me in the studio. But like always, I've got something to say. So there's definitely action that we can take to join the fight. And make no mistake about it. We are in a war. We are in a war politically, culturally, spiritually. I think we see it. We can bury our head in the sand all we want. But eventually that tidal wave is coming. The tidal wave is already here. So to pretend like it's not happening, we do ourselves a great disservice. We do our community a great disservice. And to just to chalk it up and say, hey, I'm only one person, what good does it do? I don't want to have awkward conversations. Well, let me tell you, I mean, I don't want to be a fearmonger or scare you listeners, but there's going to be a time, more likely than not, where whether it's power failure, it's food shortages, it's lack of clean water, it's some other thing that we're not even anticipating. I mean, who would have anticipated in 2020, say 10 years prior to that we would have a run on toilet paper, that we would be, going on Amazon and paying $80 for a jumbo roll of industrial grade sandpaper toilet paper, and we were just fighting over stuff like that. Or our neighbors that were stockpiling and doomsday prepping, we were totally reliant on them. Who would have figured that would happen, say in 2010 when we're looking ahead? That's even during the heyday of the, if you can call it a heyday, during the doomsday of the Obama era, we still had it relatively good, right? Up until, the end of Trump's first term is when things started really going sideways. And we can argue about how all that started all day long. Who was involved with it, who was responsible for it, the lies, the cover-up of the whole pandemonium regarding the pandemic. I think we all can kind of see a little bit clearly now in the rear view that this wasn't some innocuous thing, some accident that just happened, evolved through nature and natural happenings. There was definitely malfeasance involved with that. So the level of that malevolence, I don't know. I am not traditionally a conspiracy theorist, but you have to think that we have some bad actors in the government. We have some bad officials. I used to think that fundamentally our leadership in our country was good, had our good in mind. I don't believe that now. And it took me maybe into my 40s before I come to the sad to the sad reality that the good people in government, and I put Trump in there, put Reagan in there, obviously. I'm a big Reagan guy. Other leaders face so much war from even within their own party and the uniparty swamp that we see now in Washington, D.C., and to a lesser extent that it plagues the states. I mean, if you look at the people that are leading the GOP party, the Republican Party, whether you look at statewide or you look at nationally, is this really the best that we can put out there? Are these, if the world and the culture is a forest fire, are these the best firefighters that we can deploy? The first and best emergency responders that we can send? No, far cry from it. Some of you listeners right now are better suited to be a state official, a leader of a political party, a U.S. congressman or woman. You're better suited right now. You're better suited for it right now. The problem is inherent. If you watch the movie Gladiator, when Maximus was asked to take over the role of emperor, if you watch that movie, Russell Crowe, year 2000, what does he say to the emperor when the emperor is dying or going to, sees it, he's at the end of his life? He wants Maximus to be the emperor, and he says, no, I don't want that. He doesn't want that type of power. He doesn't want that responsibility. He says, that is exactly why it must be you, Maximus. That's the sad reality of leaders in our community, in our states, in our country. The best people can't or don't want to become leaders. So that's also a side note, a reason why I started a grassroots organization out here called GCON, which stands for Grassroots Conservatives of Nevada. We started the Prump chapter out here, the first chapter anywhere, as far as I'm aware of, with that goal in mind, to maybe get some of these servant leaders up off their hands and jump into the game, possibly recruit them, help them to become viable, because I know a major turnoff is raising money. No one wants to go out there and beg for money for campaigns. But the fact is, it's more than money. Money helps, obviously, in a campaign, but there's other ways to rise to viability. I'm proof positive of that. I barely raised any money for my campaign. Came within 300 votes or so of defeating a very well-funded, well-known incumbent. So, I mean, there's hope out there. And at the end of the day, even though we fell short, I think our activity, our grassroots support that we received in this community, the items that we're able to push forward, the agenda that I had in mind, hopefully I like to think that it is making our leadership and our assembly person right now an even better assembly person than he would have been had he faced little to no competition. So I hope that's the case. But either way, it was a good experience for me. So I want to talk about a couple items today in particular, how the First Amendment culturally, spiritually, politically, and especially in the media, ironically, is being under siege, attacked. If you read the First Amendment clearly, the free press is explicitly mentioned in the First Amendment. The right to free speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press. Ironically, the media itself is in some ways usurping the power it has embedded in and preserved in the First Amendment. So we'll talk more about that. Obviously, we know the Second Amendment is under full assault in Nevada. I'll talk a little bit about that as well. Another point I want to talk about, we need to thicken our skin, even as conservatives. A couple issues come to mind right off the bat with that. The pro-life issue. GOP platform explicitly states that the Republican Party is one of pro-life. And I know there's some substantive arguments against that, and we can address that. I might not have time to do that today, but I'm using that as an example of points of view that we as conservatives have that we maybe are not really explicitly stating or battling for. So I got to ask you, when did the GOP, the grand old party, the Republican Party, become the party of political expedience? This party that I'm belonging to, the party of Reagan, the party of Lincoln, most recently the party of Donald J. Trump, was formed in the mid to late 1800s to explicitly combat slavery. Was the issue politically expedient back then? Was it a winning issue? Like you'll see some pundits right now, even in my own party, the talking heads, the experts, the political strategists. Oh, don't go for that platform. Don't accentuate that. It's a losing issue. Roe v. Wade getting overturned has really hurt the party. We need to move on to bigger and better issues that we can win on. You know, I guess you can look at certain things and say, well, in the practical realm, does taking a stand on certain issues, is that a quote-unquote winning strategy? Well, I guess the answer to that is kind of ambiguous, right? It depends on what your ultimate victory is. Is ultimate victory for the GOP to gain a majority in the Senate so we can, say, duplicate Mitch McConnell, Paul Ryan, Mitt Romney type candidates? Would it help if we had 60 out of 100 senators that were just like Mitch McConnell, just like Mitt Romney? Would the world be better? Would this be utopia? Is that the end game? Just to have more numbers, to say that our team has more red shirts than blue shirts in the halls of Congress and in the U.S. Senate and the Capitol? No, to me, that's not the goal. It's really simple. Something's either right or it's wrong. Something is either good or it's bad. If the issue of slavery was bad, which Republicans agreed it was bad, then that's what your platform is. Regardless of, you don't take a poll. You don't go ask your neighbors, hey, is this a winning issue? Should we form this political party, the GOP, the Republican Party, to battle against slavery? Is that a winning issue? Well, that's not even of consequence. That's a stupid question. The question should only be, is it the right thing to do to eliminate slavery? Is slavery antithetical to the Declaration of Independence? Yes, it is. All men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with unalienable rights. Everyone. You know, back then, just like now, people like to change the definition of things, right? So back then, maybe they said, well, you know, African Americans aren't really men, so that doesn't apply, right? Just like now, they're changing the language with the pronouns, with all these different things. They're compelling our speech. No longer can you actually have names for certain things. You can't say a woman or a pregnant woman or soon-to-be mother. You have to say a person who's able to give birth or whatever. It's like the definition has now become the title. Like you can no longer have a word which is used to identify something or a concept or a definition, but we use in our English language a word. And I heard this being expressed on numerous podcasts this week, actually, this hijacking of our language. So this tactic has been used by people who I believe are forces of darkness, forces of evil throughout time. The Democrat Party, founded, have they ever really been for minorities? Or are they using minorities to help win elections, to seize power? You know, you heard it a long time ago in school, if you're anywhere near my age, even younger or older, that the parties switched. There was a switch in the parties. See, nowadays, Democrats are more like Republicans were in the 1800s. And if, Abraham Lincoln were around now, he would be a Democrat because the party switched. That dopey BS was taught to me when I was in school. Didn't sound right then. Doesn't sound right now. The parties did not switch. You can't just take a couple former Southern racist Democrats who then switched and became Republicans and all of a sudden said that the party switched, right? Just like in 1940s Nazi Germany, if a few Nazis went ahead and joined Key Club, did the Nazi party switch to become a service group like Key Club or Kiwanis? No, they're still Nazis. Because a few of them went and joined a different club doesn't change what a Nazi is. So I hope that logic can take, because to me it just, this preposterous argument, and keep in mind, when I was in grade school, before I registered as a Republican, I wasn't deeply invested in any political ideology. You know, it was just common sense that parties just don't switch like that. But yet that narrative carries on, because even USA Today, you can look up and they're far from a right-wing bastion. They even admit the first 23 members of the House of Representatives, U.S. congressmen who were African American, were all Republicans. The first 23 elected African American Congress members were Republicans. But then the paper obviously goes to devolve and say that, the party switched, the ideals switched, and okay, so the party of the KKK, of institutionalized slavery, the Jim Crow laws, fighting against a lot of the segregation laws on the books and practices. Which party was battling for that? Which party was actually the one that was fighting against that? It was the Republicans fighting against that, the Jim Crow laws. The parties never switched, ladies and gentlemen, and if this is the first time you've heard that, I'm happy and I'm sad. I'm sad that it took you this long to hear it. Unless you're a 5-year-old driving in the car with your parents, and it's the first time you've heard it, then I'm happy. But I'm happy at least now. Better to get the truth later than never. So that's an important thing to come to grips with, is that this party that in this foundation stood firm on a line that they knew to be true, to be good, regardless of the polling, regardless of whether they would ever have a candidate reach the White House, which they did. And coincidentally, I won't say ironically, coincidentally is what I deem to be the best president who ever lived, Abraham Lincoln. And you can point to the fact that, well, Abraham Lincoln, how anti-slavery was he? Because he said that he would, allow slavery to be instituted in the states in which it exists if it was to preserve the Union. Well, don't make no mistake about it. People, in order to have effective change, have to make certain concessions. The Founding Fathers did it when they found this country, when we developed, after our Declaration of Independence, into our Constitution. It took a while before slavery could be eradicated. Does that mean they had to come to Jesus' moment years and years and years later and decided, slavery should be destroyed, the institution should be destroyed, and we should ratify and amend the Constitution? No, they always had that on their mind, that this was the battle plan to eventually eradicate a horrible, anti-biblical, antithetical, with morality institution like slavery. It had to be abolished. I equate that now to the life issue. Every state, almost, that I can think of allows abortion in one way, shape, or form, regardless of Roe versus Wade being overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court. The states now have control and dominion over abortion laws. So when I hear, and it's fresh out of my mind because I attended the Women's Resource Medical Center annual banquet this past Friday, and it's good being in a room with many people who have a pro-life stance, but absent from that room was many in my own party who kind of trend away and stay away from this issue, even though it is part of the party platform. It's too toxic or possibly dangerous, I guess, in their estimation. There was some candidates there, and you guys know who you are if you attended the banquet in Las Vegas this past Friday. The question should only be, what is right? If that child in a womb is an autonomous human being with its distinct heartbeat, now scientifically proven to come around day number 22, and you ask yourself, how many weeks is that gestation? Well, that's about 3 weeks, at a point when it's almost impossible for many women to detect and to verify that they are pregnant. You have an autonomous human being, complete with its own blood type, his or her own blood type, unique DNA, eye colors already planned out, fingerprints already mapped out genetically, possibly a different blood type, distinct human being growing inside the womb, what should be the most the safest place for a human being to be in their existence is to be inside the womb of their mother. Ends up becoming oftentimes their actual, for lack of better words, execution chamber, right? That's what it is when you have an abortion. So the question should only be, is the practice right or is it wrong? Biologically and scientifically, there's no debate about it. That's a life. That he or she is a human being inside another human being, arguably. So the geography is within another human being. But does geography ever equate to your humanity? I mean, am I more human if I live in Antarctica or less human if I live in Antarctica than I am if I live in Las Vegas, Nevada, Pahrump, Nevada, Auckland, New Zealand? That would be silly, right? So geography should really logically and scientifically have no bearing on one's humanity. But it does, right? So that's one of the horrible things about our current state of affairs. And you're talking 60 million human beings since Roe v. Wade was established in the early 1970s have been aborted, have been murdered, have been killed in the womb. That's a staggering amount. You're talking almost 10 times more babies being slaughtered than people were slaughtered in concentration camps through Nazi Germany, World War II time. So it's a sobering thought. I think I did the math before. Like, say you had a big jug of, I don't know, we'll call it marbles, grains of rice, marbles, whatever it is, a huge jar of it, and you're able to pick one out every second. How long do you think it would take for you to pick out, one per second, and you're not even sleeping, you're not even resting? How long would it take for you to pluck out 60 million plus marbles or grains of rice? It would take you, I think the calculation is well over 17 months straight. That's without sleeping, that's without eating, every single second, take out one. I mean, the number's so staggering that we oftentimes throw these numbers around like it's not a big deal, like we don't even care about 60 million. Oh, the debt is up to 23 trillion, or, our unfunded liabilities are $80 trillion. These numbers are so massive, even at the 60 million range, that it's incredible. So imagine you spend $1 a second of your life for 18 months straight without sleeping, you would not get to that figure and spend $60 million. It's a staggering sum, but that's what our culture has ingrained in us as good or something that is tolerable, something that maybe is something that we have to do. The same people that say, trust the science, look to science. Oh, you right-wingers, you Christians, you're science deniers. Well, I'm not denying any science right now, and I don't think any biologist worth his or her medal can deny the fact that is a human being. Now, let's have an honest conversation and just say it for what it is, that you're not pro-choice, that you are pro-murder on demand of another human being, provided that the geography is within another human being's womb. So that's what you're supporting. You are pro-death. That's what it is. And there are a few things I tell people that I'm willing to die on a hill for: my family, my faith, human life. That's it. Those are the main things. So when we lose sight of that, when we talk about victory or something's not a winning issue, if that's taken off the table for someone like me in politics, or if I'm ever seeking elected office, then the battle is lost before the election results are in, and I wouldn't care if I won by a landslide of votes. If that goal was never attainable, or I had to just forego that goal of making pro-life the law of the land, eradicating the practice of abortion, then I've already lost the game. I've lost it. It's not a game I'd even want to play. So, and that goes to say with other not quite as pressing matters. Like there in Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution, there's a provision for changing the Constitution and bypassing the U.S. Congress, U.S. Senate. It's called the Convention of States. That's another issue I've been told by all the talking heads in the Republican Party and in conservatives in general, that that's a losing issue. Well, let me ask you this. How in the world are we ever going to get term limits on U.S. congressmen, U.S. senators? I think we can all agree. We don't want Mitch McConnell up there for 150 years. You don't want Biden up there for what seems to be thousands of years as a do-nothing U.S. senator and then become an even do-less president of the United States. That's what's wrong with the system. Are they going to ever vote themselves term limits? They'll never do that. All these guys and girls win elections to the U.S. House or to the U.S. Senate, and although their salaries are not bad, a couple $100,000 a year or whatever they make to be in Washington, D.C., thinking of new ways to spend your money and sell out your grandchildren and their grandchildren down the line, and by running us into debt, devaluing our currency, and probably destroying our economy. That's another story, but that's what they do. They get paid pretty handsomely for that, but somehow most of them retire as millionaires. Don't know how that happens. Most of them get jobs as VPs on Fortune 500 type companies and things like that. They become millionaires, book deals, run as a big super loser for president. How many different people have run for president and probably polled about as well as you or I would before they bowed out? Yet they write a book and someone pays them money for it. They make money off their book. I'm looking at, some candidates right now. Nikki Haley, come on, now, please. Mike Pence, really? Yeah, good luck, Mike Pence. Hopefully you're a gifted writer, because that is the only way you're going to make any headway in this decision. Same with you, Nikki Haley. The lack of self-awareness is just crazy with some of these people. So I want to go back and talk a little bit about what the media is doing. When I talked about at the beginning of the show about how the media is kind of messing with the very First Amendment that is there to protect them. And I'm pointing specifically to the issue of Tucker Carlson and Fox News and what I think is going to be happening. And by the time you hear this on the radio, maybe news is broken out, but this is the vibe I've been getting from Fox News, is that however long they had Tucker Carlson on contract for, I don't know, some people have said it's up to like 3 more years, and if he's owed $20 million a year, he's owed $60 million, and that he really wasn't technically fired, so he's not really free to join another organization, and he's not really free to really go off on his own because of the non-compete nature of different contracts. My worry is that Fox News is willing to cut off its nose to spite its face. You're going to cut I was telling people, I'm like, even if, say he makes $60 million, if he can provide 5-fold that in revenue and profit for the company, they're willing to let go of $300+ million in lost revenue or sustained stock loss or whatever this ends up turning out to be. I heard they've already lost somewhere between $700 million and $1 billion in stock value. But see, I don't think they care. Honestly, I don't think they care about that. I think there's other forces behind this from the other side. And when I say other side, I don't mean just the left or the Democrats. I mean spiritually, the forces of darkness. Call it whatever you want, evil, regardless of the letter behind your name, regardless of your voter registration, regardless of your ideology or what super PAC you're a part of. I think there's a concerted effort they'll be willing to pay Tucker Carlson $20 million a year for 3 years while he basically sits on his sofa and sends out the occasional tweet and pretty much defang him, declaw him for 3 years to take his voice out of the public discourse, to take his opinions, to take his stance, to take his punditry away from you, the public, to silence him, to do it. And I guess you call it a legal way, right? Because he's a grown man. He signed a contract. This is the terms of the contract. So did he sign up for a contract? Yeah. Anytime you work for someone, you have the possibility that they can railroad you in a lot of different ways that you probably never see coming when you sign the contract until you come to a situation like this. Because most capitalists, and I'm a capitalist, would believe that you have an employee. Yeah, you're paying them, I don't know. In my case, I'd be paying an employee between $10 and $20 an hour, depending upon what they're doing for me. But with the idea that by paying this person, their output is multiplying profit. So say that person, I hire them at $20 an hour, but the net effect is an extra $40, $50, $60 an hour for my company. It's a no-brainer, right? I want to keep doing that. And if I can hire 10 people and have that same percentage of return on investment, that's what I'll do. And Tucker Carlson probably believed that too. I'm Tucker Carlson. I'm adding value to the station, as evidenced by 3 million plus devoted listeners and viewers every single night when he would be on. That's tremendous, especially in this day and age of all the different formats, the media platforms out there, like Rumble, like YouTube. You know, Bill O'Reilly likes to compare himself and say, I had more to listen. Well, Bill O'Reilly also was before the real explosion of the online platform and streaming. So whether it's Rumble or YouTube or wherever you get your content, wherever you're listening to this, for instance, right now, whether it's my site or one of the big publishers out there like YouTube or Rumble or, Vimeo, audio versions, SoundCloud, wherever, you're actually consuming this content. Bill O'Reilly didn't have that up against him. So in many ways, regardless of how many actual eyeballs are on Tucker every single night, better host, better product. If Tucker could go back in time, Bill O'Reilly getting 4 million a night, Tucker would get 6 without the competition from other media sources out there. I mean, OAN, Newsmax, Real America's Voice, these other, networks are actually cutting in to some of the viewership. I mean, as evidenced by Newsmax has had a huge bump in their viewership since Tucker was let go of his duties at Fox. And that's not because Tucker all of a sudden is on Newsweek and bringing eyeballs. It's just by creating a void now where not a lot of people want to tune into that time slot where Tucker used to be. Or in my case, I don't think I've watched Fox News since this, and I probably won't. So they switch over to Newsmax to consume their content. So this is the ripple effect, and sadly, I think it's a means to an end that they're okay, these corporate powers, to lose X amount of dollars every year or destroy the portfolios of their stockholders in order to silence a powerful person like Tucker Carlson, who doesn't toe the company line, who speaks his mind. I think we need to pray for people like Tucker. I pray for Tucker's sake, because I think he is a patriot. I think he's honest. I think he's super talented, probably the best journalist that I've been witness to since I've been on this earth. He's the most gifted pundit out there, hands down. To have him on the sidelines for the next 2 to 3 years would be bad for society, because I think he's a very good check. He's a very good person at keeping elected officials, corporations accountable. And when we take him off of any platform, we're doing a disservice not only to the conservative listeners out there, but to the people who could possibly be swayed by his brand of logic, which is, to me, that's like his logic is on fire. He's able to convey complex things to simple-minded folks like me, and I'm appreciative of that. So that's just one aspect of how the First Amendment is under attack. It is. I mean, it's under attack now, because I don't know how long I'll be on YouTube, for instance, before we get strikes and taken off that platform or suspended. That's one way that they get you on Facebook. Fact checkers are the best, right? The ones that mute your posts on social media. Click here to see the content. Well, if you're following someone, you want to see their content. We're not pinheads. If we don't like the content that we're seeing, we don't need these fake fact checkers telling us that it could be false or partly false. I don't care. Let me read it. Let me consume the data and let me extrapolate and let me make a decision, because there's neurons firing between my ears. I'm not an idiot, and neither are you. We can make these decisions on our own. And we know too, moving on to another topic here, I'll put that one to rest on the First Amendment. I think we all know that it's under attack in our culture. The Second Amendment. the right to keep and bear arms. And again, like on a different show, reiterate explicitly in that amendment to our Constitution, the rights shall not be infringed. Yet what do we see in Nevada? A few bills, Assembly Bill, I think it's 354, 355. The first one, taking away the rights for anybody under 21, even an adult or even a child under direct supervision from their parent, takes away their right to have a semi-automatic rifle, which is preposterous because in many ways, a lightweight rifle is great to learn on. If young shooters are firing a rifle, they can fire it relatively well without brutal recoil, without sacrificing accuracy. It's a great thing for young kids to do. If I was to have my boys learn I would say, hey, try shooting a .22 rifle, which would technically be, semi-automatic. Most of them fires a very small round. Not a lot of kickback. They're not going to bust their shoulder open. They're going to usually probably come near the target that they aim at. But yet our lawmakers are trying to restrict that, trying to outlaw that here in Nevada. The second law would be banning, I believe it's within 100 yards of polling places, firearms. Oh, so let's create election day gun-free zones at our polling places. I ask you listeners, what are the bigger groups that actually show up on election day to vote? I would say conservatives, Republicans, or at least, conservative-leaning voters. Many of you, including me, had made a habit of showing up on election day to cast our vote. So we're just going to go ahead and relinquish our Second Amendment right, make ourselves soft targets, and just hope that the Nye County Sheriff's Office, or if you're in Vegas listening to this, the Metropolitan Police Department can respond quick enough, send an ambulance to hopefully cauterize your wounds, take the machete out of your head that some crazy lunatic leftist shoved at you, take away, hopefully help you stay alive so you can vote for the next cycle. Hopefully they'll be great at first responding. Oftentimes, police forces, sheriff's deputies, they can't be everywhere at once. You're your best line of defense. So what's that going to do? We talk about voter disenfranchisement, right? Like getting an ID or showing your ID is voter disenfranchisement to all these different people that the left patronizes. They treat many of you in the voting block, if you're listening to this and you are not a conservative, if you are a liberal, if you are a minority, if you're a person of color, just know that the party that treats you like a 2-year-old, that treats you like you're helpless, like you're so poor and inadequate that you don't know how to use the internet or register to vote or go get an ID, that's the party that wants you dependent and enslaved to it through voting. So just know that you yourselves, voters out there on the left, or who tend to vote for the more liberal or left-leaning candidate, you are a means to end for this party, the Democrat Party, this apparatus, this the party with the platform of basically death in all facets, death to America, death to unborn children, death to traditional values, death to American exceptionalism. That's what you're embracing. You're embracing that party. So please wake up. Wake up. Wake up right now, because we're about to go to a quick commercial break. So we're going to be back in just a minute or so. Thank you.
Why I'm Proud to Be an American by Devin Craddy. 158 years ago, our amazing 16th president, Abraham Lincoln, wrote a very powerful speech called the Gettysburg Address. In this speech, he told us we should honor the deceased by continuing to fight for what they died for during the Civil War, which allowed us peace and freedom in America, which is why I'm very passionate for our country. We will always fight for what we think is right. This message brought to you by Matt Sadler.
Veterans Crisis Line. Dial 988. Veterans Crisis Line. Dial 988. then press 1. Someone is available who cares. Someone is available who will listen. Someone is available who will help. Veterans Crisis Line 988. And we're back. Thank you for not only waking up, but staying awake and coming back and joining us for the home stretch here of the Nevada Patriot podcast. Again, all of our content can be found at thenevadapatriot.com. I really appreciate each and every one of you. Even if there's only one of you listening to this, thank you for listening to me. You're giving my wife a break, actually. Otherwise, I'd be doing the same exact thing while I stare at her on the other side of the kitchen table. So she thanks you as well. So we already talked about the concerns that are plaguing us here locally, nationally. Before we get to the end of this, I just want to give our listeners a pathway, pretty much our last stand. This is our Alamo, because out of the 1,100 plus bills that were presented in Carson City to change the laws or amend laws or add new laws here in the state of Nevada, hundreds of them have gotten through. That means hundreds of them are likely to be voted on, not only on the floor, but then possibly signed into law by our governor. So it's very important now that we express our concerns with certain bills to our governor. So I do want you to check out our website, thenevadapatriot.com. Try to find the link that says, actually the best way to get there is to the link that says GCON, which is that organization that I'm starting. You click on that link on the page, on the tabs above the page. There's a link right on that page. Once you land on that next page about contacting the governor directly through the messaging board there, it's real easy. You just click on that, contact the governor. It'll ask you to reference a certain kind of bill or a topic that you want to address. Please reach out to him. There's probably a lot of force with the numbers that we can put together to hopefully get him to veto a lot of the bad legislation. Those bills that I talked about before, AB 354, AB 355, if they get voted on, it's necessary and so important that he vetoes that. There's a host of other bills. You can check our different archives of different shows for all the bad bills that I've highlighted specifically. There are some that have squeaked through that will possibly change our election laws forever. A few of those will be AB 242, AB 246. Please express to the governor that you want him to veto these bills should they make it past a successful vote. Please tell him to veto that, to kill that. We don't want our elections to be further and further opened up to possible fraud, unfairness, voter disenfranchisement, and we don't want centralized control over our voting systems. We live in a rural county here, in Nye County, for a reason. We don't live in Clark County. We don't live in Washoe. We moved here for a reason. Our county clerk should be in charge of the day-to-day items that aren't expressly given to the Nevada Secretary of State or to state law. The clerk has to be allowed to do his or her job in any rural county. So let's preserve that. Let's try to strike those bills down. You can still contact your assemblyman or your senator to voice disapproval as well. There's a link for that also at thenevadapatriot.com. But again, our governor reaching out directly through the portal, through that link is vitally important. Again, that's at thenevadapatriot.com. That's one way we can show our heart to our governor, what we want. The government is there to rule by the consent of the governed, and that's us. So let them know what we consent to and what we do not consent to. So we're going to go into a couple announcements here before we call it quits for this evening. So want to let everybody know about a No Solar Farm rally. So this is expressly a rally against industrial solar farms in and around our Pahrump community, particularly. It's this coming Saturday, May 6th, 10 a.m. to 12 noon on the corner of 160 and 372 here in Pahrump. Park in the rear of the Nugget parking lot. The rally is going to be on the corner there. There's going to be signs provided. out there in the parking lot. If you don't have your own, there will be items and materials there for you to get involved with that. Also, May 7th, that's the Sunday directly after that, one weekend before Mother's Day, May 7th, the Conservative Women's Tea, 2 p.m. at the Artesia Community Center. Tickets are necessary to get in advance, and they are only $35. That includes all taxes and fees on Eventbrite. The link is also on our site, thenevadapatriot.com. There's still a couple seats to fill up there. It's going to be a great event. There's going to be great guest speakers, good food. Of course, there's going to be tea, live music, DJ. It's going to be a great time. So we invite you ladies to get involved with that. Proceeds do benefit the PVRW, which is the Pahrump Valley Republican Women, who do a lot of philanthropic work. They do a lot of community service-oriented work. It's not just to throw in a money pit where they dance around and swim in it. It's actually going back into our community in many ways. Scholarships included for our high school kids in Nye County, Pahrump and Beatty in particular, as well as coming alongside other charitable forces in our community to help them. If you ever experienced free cotton candy at any events or attractions at the park, if you've gotten free cotton candy, that's where the money goes as well. So please think about attending that event on May 7th. Then we have May 20th, a car show at Coyote's Den. This is on Quarter Horse and Kellogg near the south end of town. It's from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. There's going to be live music, I hear, starting at around 11 a.m. Obviously, there's going to be food, libations, a good entertaining vibe going on at that event. I'll be there next to 97.7 FM's booth. I'll be with Mr. Greco, and I think D Mounts also, who has a show on this on this station, is also going to be in attendance. So come by, say hi to us. We can always chat. We love to hear feedback from you. Later on that night, on May 20th, 6 p.m., the NCRCC, that's the Nye County Republican Central Committee Gala, a red tie event. Tickets are $75. Guest speaker will be Wayne Allen Root. He's a huge conservative voice, resident of Southern Nevada. He'll be speaking there. There's going to be great food, obviously, other entertainment, auction items, dessert dash. It's going to be a fun night. So that about covers it up. And I really covers it up. That about covers it. I appreciate you listening. Thank you so much, listeners out there. And until next show, God bless.
You've just spent some of the best minutes of your life hanging out with Matt Sadler at the Nevada Patriot Podcast. Thank you for listening. Tell a friend and join us next time. After you catch your breath, check out the NevadaPatriot.com for more content, advertising opportunities, and to give listener feedback. That website again is the NevadaPatriot.com. Until next time, Patriots, stay American.